Testament reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew, 11th chapter, starting from verse 28 up to 30. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
We Americans work too hard, too many hours. According to the Center for American Progress, especially on the topic of work and family life balance, in 1960s, only 20% of mothers worked. Today, about 70% of American children live in a household where all parents or all adults are employed. U.S. Department of Labor Statistics backs up this data and notes that 75% of those women working, they are full-time. I don't care who stays home or who works in terms of gender, because I believe the work opportunity must be equal for all people, and it is, at the end, a family choice. Either way, when all adults are working, single or with a partner, that's a huge hit to American life, especially the family life, and how to balance the free time in American household. I kind of did some research about the U.S. and learned that the United States is the only country among the industrialized and developed countries without a national paid parental leave benefit. The average is over 12 weeks of paid leave anywhere other than Europe, and in Europe over 20 weeks. But in the United States, zero, without any mandatory sort of options for the new parents to take a parental leave. And that is the situations. And I'm thinking of the Saint Jerome, who lived in the 4th century in a Christian tradition. And this is what he said, and I quote it in our bulletin too. We Americans work hard, and I'm quoting and adopting St. Jerome's idea. We work very hard until good is better, and our better is best. And we are creating a so intense, competitive society. And with these backdrops, our text today calls to remembrance that the very first Sabbath, when none of us was around, and when God had an entire Sabbath to God's self, when after 6 days of very intense and enormous labor, of wild creativity, God took the 7th day off to catch his breath. Notice that God did not hallow the day on which God made all the beasts of the earth and the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. Even on the day when God created every creeping thing that creeps upon the face of the earth. And God did not hallow even that day on which God made you and me, male and female. No, God hallowed that day, and that day only, on which God did nothing at all but rest. When my daughter Grace was much younger, my family often visited the Central Park. I love to go there because I love to watch people relaxing. It's the most, in my opinion, non-competitive American scene, especially in the Big Apple. You know, people all walk so much in a hurry. And with the exception of some occasional, mean child, no one is trying to take anything away from anybody. And only on a seesaw, I saw someone trying to rise by making somebody else go down. But that's okay, because it is on a seesaw. And everybody, those reading on the benches, the dog walkers, the frisbee players, the lovers strolling down the path, the families sitting on the grass, or more often in a very colorful kind of blanket, everyone is receiving something, like a renewed sense of physical and spiritual well-being. It's coming from everywhere, this sense of well-being, from the sky and the air, from the scudding cloud and the singing birds. It's coming from the river, and even it's coming from the ice cream cone. From the sounds of Circle Line ferries, and a home stretch of one of the most, I think, gorgeous trips that any tourist who visits New York City probably at least once should do. But most of all, this sense of well-being is coming from the people themselves, from each other, because they now have time for each other. And it's all free. Lord, thy fullness have we received, grace upon grace, again and again. Going back to today's Genesis text, God must have been exhausted by the seventh day. And if God needed to rest, you can count on it. So do we. Our spurting hearts, our reeling heads, our very tired feet, they all need rest. And in so doing, to receive anew that sense of well-being. If God needed to rest, so do you. It's a dangerous theology trying to improve on God. Yet there must be something among us, there's something prideful about our reluctance to rest more often. And I have to confess, when I see the appointment book on my phone, when it is filled with activities, sometimes I feel better because my little ego thinks that the busier, maybe I'm more worthy. This is just sheer illusions. I imagine on the first Sabbath that God threw a party. God had a lot to celebrate. Read the 15th chapter of Gospel of Luke. Then you will find the following. At the end of the parable of the lost sheep, the sheep was found, and the shepherd threw a party, happy party. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, you also see the parable of the lost coin. And at the end of that parable, when the coin was found, a widow, a woman, threw a party. And at the end of the parable of the prodigal son, you remember, when the son was found and finally returned home, the father threw a big party. According to Jesus, listen carefully, according to Jesus and according to the Bible, God is partying all the time. God is partying all the time, looking at us. And once again, it's a dangerous theology to try to improve on God. God rested, and God threw a party. And I imagine God also took stars. He had a lot to think about, and so do we. And last night, frankly, I went to sleep at 1 a.m. and I woke up at 5 a.m. And I think I was concerned about the whole situations, how we can best prepare, if not meeting this holy sanctuaries together, that how can we do the best to replicate as close as possible to our worshipful experience as a community of faith. It also occurred to me that going to another place, just like in my case, go to Central Park, and another time, I have to say, at least like 15 years ago, it sometimes creates in a wonderful way to triangulate myself and at a different time. And in those times, when my soul rests a little bit and try to, finally create that inner space, and I'm asking these questions. Am I being what I really want to be? Am I doing what I really want to do? Is my church doing all it can in order to make Christ visible in this world? What more can I do personally about the problems that we face today and many days? The problems of violence in American life, problems of the discriminations, and all the list goes on. And then, especially these days, what and who I should become when the nation is shaken by the pandemic of coronavirus. I think we need to be the hope bearers in the midst of chaos. And I think we also need to present that inner peace that only we can have in our deep relationship with God. And how fair is our relationship with God? As you know, the C.S. Lewis is a famous Christian writer, and he was also a professor of literature at Oxford University. Shortly a year after the death of Joy, that was his wife's name, the loving companion, Dr. Lewis said of her such a wonderful thing, and I'm quoting this sentence. It wasn't what joy gave me so much, but it was what she never took away from me. And I often think of God that way. What God gives us is no more impressive than what God never takes. Put differently, it's a wonderful thing to be loved by someone. And I truly think that is really a wonderful thing. To be loved by someone who will never be in a competition with you. But someone who only thing that she or he wants from you is your joy, your happiness, your exaltation. But when you start to think of it, I think God is probably the only person in my life who never competes with me. So I like to be with God. It gives me peace. I don't have to be pretentious. I don't have to try to do the monkey business in order to show what I'm not. That is why it is so restful and peaceful to be with God, and why God is so readily found in our rest rather than in our busyness. Be still and know that I am God. Come unto me, all you who labor and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. As God will never compete with us, so God will never desert us. Many of you, I imagine, know the hymn, "O love, that will not let me go." You know that song, right?
No.
But what you may not know is that it is written by Reverend George Matherson, a famous Scottish preacher, who in his handsome young days, he was engaged to a beautiful woman. But when the doctors determined that Reverend Matherson was going to be blind, she broke the engagement. It was then, out of in the depths of sorrow and grief, that he sat down and poured out this hymn. "Oh Lord, that will not let me go. I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths his flow may reach her full love be." How can someone offer this kind of beautiful hymn in the midst of turmoils of loss and grief? And I think maybe in the midst of this kind of turmoil that our nation faces, you and I can still sing and praise God and be the witness. Instead of panicking, help others to be still. And how we embrace this, and how we can overcome, how we can help those medical personnel, government leaders, trying to contain and overcome this challenge. A final purpose of rest seems very obvious. While God rests on the seventh day, there is certainly no indication that that was what God has in mind to do forever and ever. Certainly it wasn't long before rescuing the human race became a God's full-time job, 24/7 plus. And saving the human race is also our job. The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. Success may be far from certain. But where we cannot be optimistic, perhaps we can be more persistent. Don't give up. We shouldn't give up. We shouldn't give up in our worshipful life. We shouldn't give up maintaining the joy and meaning in our life, in the midst, even in spite of these situations. We shouldn't give up to encourage one another, even through the phone. I may restrain myself to making a personal person-to-person pastoral visit. Let's open up our phone lines and reach out and encourage one another. And if at a regular interval, if we rest with God, I think we can return with God. St. Paul would say, to run the straight race, to fight the good fight, to endure unto the end, until with all the saints that we are made partakers of God's eternal kingdom. So, brothers and sisters, slow down a little bit and get some rest, even if in the midst of fear and confusion. Would you promise? Let us slow down. Let us rest for our soul, for our spirit, so that we can be who we are as God intended us to be. My heart is kind of a little sad because I'm going to have to say God be with you until we meet again in this wonderful, cozy, warm, sacred space such as our sanctuary, face to face. And be safe and healthy, but let's get connected. All God's people say, Amen.
Amen.